What if I told you that some of the most iconic, most desired, most unforgettable women in Hollywood history were told they were too fat? It's the story of the legendary actresses who smashed those molds, broke the rules, and proved that star power isn't a dress size. We're talking about the women who were supposedly too fat to be actresses, but who became legends anyway. Get ready, because we're about to rewrite the history books. 1. Marilyn Monroe. We have to start with the Queen, the one and only Marilyn Monroe. Is there any other celebrity so famous for her body? She was the epitome of the hourglass figure. But behind the scenes, it was a constant battle. Studio execs at Fox, particularly Daryl F. Zanuck, were forever on her case about her weight. In the fantastic book Goddess: The Secret Lives of Marilyn Monroe by Anthony Summers, there are accounts of studio memos expressing concern that she was getting too heavy. They put her on strict, miserable diets. For the 7-year itch, her weight was a major topic of discussion. They wanted her slim. They wanted her toned. Look at behind-the-scenes photos and you can see the tension. But here's the thing. The public didn't want a skinny Marilyn. They wanted her. The soft, pillowy, breathtakingly feminine woman who could fill out a white halter dress like nobody's business. Her dressmaker, David Zimmerman, noted that her measurements fluctuated, but she was generally a size 12 to 16 by today's sizing. She was not a size 0. She was a woman. Marilyn herself was famously quoted in Life magazine saying, "To all the girls that think you're fat because you're not a size 0, you're the beautiful one. It's society who's ugly." While that exact quote is debated, the sentiment is true to her struggles. She knew her power was in her curves. She was a master of controlling her image, posing in a way that accentuated her figure to legendary status. She took the studio's problem and turned it into her greatest asset. She wasn't just an actress, she was a phenomenon, a symbol of sensuality that was powerful, not passive. The studio tried to put her in a box, but she was too magnificent to fit. 2. Jane Russell. If Marilyn was the soft, sensual bombshell, Jane Russell was the architectural one. She was built, and the man who discovered her, the eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes, knew it. He didn't discover her acting talent. He discovered her figure. Her story is fascinating because her entire launch into stardom was a fight over her body. Hughes cast her in The Outlaw in 1941, and then spent 2 years fighting with the Hays Code, the industry's censorship board, over the promotional materials. They were obsessed with her cleavage. The film's poster, which highlighted her ample bust, was banned. Hughes, in a marketing genius move, had his engineers design a special underwire bra to lift and support her, further emphasizing her assets on camera. In her autobiography, A Jane Russell: An Autobiography, she talks about the absurdity of it all. She wrote, "I was being measured for a brassiere. Howard Hughes himself was there with a ruler, measuring the distance from my chin to my navel." Can you imagine? The studios and the censors saw her as too much, too busty, too overtly sexual for a mainstream audience. But the public, especially the GIs coming home from World War II, couldn't get enough. She was the original sweater girl. Her image was on pin-up posters in every barracks. She wasn't a delicate flower. She was a strong, statuesque, and unapologetically curvy woman. She proved that a powerful physique could be just as alluring as a delicate one, and she did it with a wit and a down-to-earth charm that made her beloved. She didn't just defy the too-fat rule. She created a whole new category of stardom. 3. Jane Mansfield. Speaking of bombshells, you can't talk about curves without talking about Jane Mansfield. If Hollywood was a competition, Jane was there to win, and her primary weapon was her spectacular figure. She was often seen as a rival to Marilyn Monroe, and she deliberately played up her curves to an almost cartoonish degree. Studios didn't know what to do with her. Was she a serious actress, a comedian, or just a spectacular body? The truth is, she was a savvy businesswoman who understood her brand. She knew her 40-21-35 measurements were her ticket to the top. Magazine articles from the era, like in Modern Screen and Photoplay, were obsessed with her body, often publishing her measurements and her diet tips, which were often bizarre. Biographer Martha Weinman Lear, in her book Jane Mansfield and the American Dream, details how Mansfield meticulously cultivated her image. She was famous for saying, "A 41-inch bust and a lot of perseverance will get you a long way." She wasn't ashamed of it. She capitalized on it. Was she too fat? By the standards of a Grace Kelly or an Audrey Hepburn, absolutely. But Jane Mansfield wasn't trying to be them. She was a force of nature, a walking, talking pinup girl with a surprisingly high IQ. She reportedly spoke 5 languages. She used the studio's obsession with her figure to her advantage, becoming one of the biggest sex symbols of the 1950s. She took the problem of being too voluptuous and turned it into a multi-million-dollar brand. 4. Judy Garland. Now, we need to take a darker turn. Not every story has a triumphant ending, and no story illustrates the cruelty of the studio system's body shaming more than that of Judy Garland. From the moment she signed with MGM as a teenager, Judy was put on a horrifying regimen. In the devastating biography, Get Happy, The Life of Judy Garland by Gerald Clark, it's revealed that studio head Louis B. Mayer called her his little hunchback and constantly berated her for her weight. They put her on a diet of chicken soup, black coffee, and cigarettes. Worse, they gave her amphetamines to keep her energy up for long days on set and barbiturates to help her sleep at night. This created a lifelong addiction that would ultimately contribute to her early death. Her weight fluctuated wildly throughout her life, and it was a constant source of public scrutiny and personal pain. Magazine headlines were brutal. They'd celebrate her when she was slim and mock her when she gained weight. Think about that. Here was one of the most talented vocalists and screen actresses of the 20th century, the star of The Wizard of Oz and A Star is Born. And yet, the studio's primary concern was that she wasn't thin enough. She wasn't fat by any means, but she wasn't the ethereal, childlike figure they wanted her to be. She was a real woman with a woman's body, and they punished her for it. Her story is a stark reminder that behind the glamour, the pressure to conform could be absolutely destructive. She succeeded in spite of the studios, not because of them, and the cost was unimaginable. 5. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor is a fascinating case study because her body and the public's perception of it changed dramatically throughout her career. In her early days at MGM, she was the perfect petite starlet. A tiny waist, delicate features. She was the ideal. But as she grew into a woman, her figure blossomed. By the time she starred in Cleopatra in 1963, she was a full-figured, voluptuous queen, and the world was obsessed. The media, however, could be vicious. Her weight fluctuations were front-page news for decades. Tabloids would run headlines like "Liz gets fat" or "the fattest actress in Hollywood." In Elizabeth by J. Randy Taraborelli, it details how this public scrutiny deeply affected her, but she also developed a thick skin. Her famous quote, "I've been on a diet my whole life. I don't even know what a real potato tastes like," says it all. But here's what's incredible. Even when the press was calling her fat, she was still the most beautiful and desired woman in the world. She was launching perfumes, winning Oscars, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and commanding the biggest salary in Hollywood. Her power wasn't tied to being a size 2. It was tied to her legendary beauty, her fiery spirit, and her undeniable talent. She showed the world that a woman could be a goddess at any size. She carried herself with such unapologetic glamour that she made fat look like a crown. 6. Sophia Loren. Let's hop across the Atlantic for a moment. While Hollywood was grappling with its own bizarre standards, Italian cinema was celebrating a different kind of woman, and the queen of that ideal was Sophia Loren. Sophia Loren was and is the embodiment of earthy, voluptuous Mediterranean beauty. Hips? Check. Bust? Check. A personality that could fill the Colosseum? Absolutely. When she broke into Hollywood, she didn't try to change herself to fit the mold. She brought her own brand of sex appeal, and it knocked everyone sideways. American magazines were fascinated by her. A 1958 Life magazine cover story called her the Italian goddess and celebrated her full figure as a welcome contrast to the svelte American stars. She was often compared to her fellow Italian screen siren Gina Lollobrigida in a rivalry of who was more bounteous. In her autobiography, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, Lauren talks about how her figure was always a part of her appeal, but she refused to let it be the only thing. She worked hard on her craft, proving herself as a serious dramatic actress, winning an Oscar for Two Women. She was never told she was too fat in the same way as her American counterparts, because she was framed as an exotic alternative. She used that to her advantage, becoming an international icon who proved that curves weren't just for pinups. They belonged on the arm of Cary Grant and on the stage accepting an Academy Award. 7. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner is another perfect example of how too fat was a ridiculous relative term. Ava was tall, with a spectacular figure that was strong and athletic, not delicate. She had a presence that filled the screen. MGM tried to mold her, of course. They tried to turn her into another Greer Garson, a proper lady. But it didn't take. Her natural, raw, and sensual persona always shone through. She wasn't a girl. She was a woman. In the excellent biography Ava Gardner, Love is Nothing by Lee Server, her struggles with the studio are detailed. They didn't know what to do with her untamed beauty and her refusal to be just another pretty face. She wasn't overweight, but she was solid. She had a real woman's body, and she loved to eat, drink, and live life to the fullest. This was a stark contrast to the carefully managed images of other stars. Her power was in her authenticity. When she plays a femme fatale, you believe it. When she plays a heartbroken lover, you feel it. She wasn't trying to squeeze into a size she wasn't. She was just Ava Gardner, and that was more than enough. She carved out a career by being a powerful, curvaceous force of nature who couldn't be tamed. 8. Shelley Winters. Shelley Winters' story is unique because she actively used her weight as a tool of her craft. She started her career in the 1940s as a blonde, glamorous starlet. She was pretty and had a good figure, but she was also a ferociously talented actress who wanted to be taken seriously. For her role as the factory girl Alice Tripp in the 1951 classic A Place in the Sun, she made a deliberate choice. She gained about 20 pounds. Why? To look more like a real working-class woman of the era. To look ordinary. In her candid autobiography, Shelley, also known as Shirley, she wrote about how the studio panicked, but she stood her ground. She knew that the extra weight would strip away the glamour and add a layer of pathos to her character. The result? She was nominated for an Academy Award. She did. It again for The Diary of Anne Frank, gaining weight and playing a plain character, which earned her another Oscar. Shelley Winters showed that an actress's power wasn't in maintaining a perfect figure, but in her ability to transform. She took the industry's fear of not being beautiful enough and turned it into a weapon. She proved that for a true artist, the body is an instrument, not an ornament. She was never too fat to be an actress. In her case, being fat made her a better one. 9. Maureen O'Hara. Maureen O'Hara wasn't a bombshell in the Monroe-Mansfield mold, but she was absolutely not the delicate, frail ideal that some studios favored. She was the queen of Technicolor, famous for her fiery red hair, her piercing green eyes, and her strong, athletic physique. She was often cast opposite the biggest male stars of the day, John Wayne, Tyrone Power, Cary Grant, and she never played the damsel in distress. She played fiery, strong-willed women who could give as good as she got. In her memoir, and as herself, she talks about her love for sports and the outdoors, and how that gave her a sturdy, capable frame. The studios didn't call her fat, but they did see her as too strong, too formidable. She wasn't a petite flower to be protected. She was a force of nature to be reckoned with. Her figure wasn't dainty, it was powerful, and that became her signature. Whether she was fighting off a suitor in The Quiet Man or standing up to pirates in The Black Swan, her physical presence was a huge part of her appeal. She proved that audiences loved a strong woman, a heroine with some meat on her bones who could believably throw a punch or stand her ground. She was too powerful to be anything but a star. 10. Bette Davis. Finally, Let's talk about a woman whose power had absolutely nothing to do with her figure and everything to do with her sheer, unadulterated talent. Bette Davis was never a conventional glamour girl. She was short, with a slight frame that she herself was often insecure about. But what she lacked in conventional curves, she made up for with a pair of eyes that could burn a hole through the screen and an intensity that was terrifying and magnetic. The studios at Warner Brothers, particularly Jack Warner, often tried to push her into more feminine roles, worried she wasn't pretty enough, but Bette Davis fought for every single role. She was famously difficult, demanding, and uncompromising because she knew her worth. In her wonderful autobiography, The Lonely Life, she talks about how she would fight the makeup and wardrobe departments. She wasn't afraid to look ugly for a part. In films like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, she deliberately made herself look grotesque. She understood that an actress's job is not to be perpetually beautiful, it's to embody a character. Bette Davis succeeded not by conforming to a body standard, but by obliterating its importance. She proved that raw, undeniable talent could trump any physical attribute. She was a star because when she was on screen, you couldn't look away. She was a testament to the idea that the most powerful thing an actress can possess is not a perfect body, but a ferocious will and a well-honed craft. So there you have it. Marilyn Monroe, Jane Russell, Jane Mansfield, Judy Garland, Elizabeth Taylor, Sophia Loren, Ava Gardner, Shelley Winters, Maureen O'Hara, and Bette Davis. 10 women who were told, in one way or another, that their bodies weren't right, that they were too much, too little, too curvy, too strong, too real. But they didn't listen, or if they did, they used it as fuel. They carved out their own space, defined their own beauty, and in doing so, they expanded the very definition of what a movie star could be. They showed the world that star power comes in all shapes and sizes. It's in the charisma, the talent, the confidence, and the courage to be unapologetically yourself. What did you think of this list? Did we miss any of your favorite curvy icons from the Golden Age? Let us know in the comments below. We love reading your thoughts and suggestions.